raising a Black son, specifically in America. And we have been hit so hard over the past, I guess, several years, but right now, there is a crisis in our country. And I want to talk a little bit about how it has affected all of us, but specifically women who are raising Black sons. And so everyone on the panel today is raising a beautiful Black king. And we're going to talk about what that means in our world and what that could mean for your world. I talked about, before we jumped on this call, that I always like to think about, begin with the end in mind, and what success for this call will be, or for this conversation. And success for this conversation is simply for someone watching or listening to have a new perspective, and us, I mean, I'm going to learn stuff on this call as well, a new perspective on how to see each other and how to deal with each other and how to deal with the pain. Quite honestly, part of me pulling this together was because I was grieving and in pain, and I needed to do something. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I go there, I want to actually introduce our panel. So I'm going to ask each mom to say a little bit about herself and a little bit about the son, beautiful son that she's raising. So I'm gonna, she's not gonna like it, but I'm gonna start with Sarah.
I know.
She was the first on, so I was like, let's start with Sarah. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Sanford. I live in Akron, Ohio. I'm lucky enough to be the mom of Jane and Jude, both African American. We don't look anything alike, so it's cool to say we're adopted because they adopted me right back. And Jude is, he's a mixed bag of tricks, because not only is he a young Black man in a primarily white neighborhood, school, everything, but he also has some special needs, which include behavioral and developmental, which put him at risk for not behaving appropriately or following the rules per se. So that's kind of where we are with it. And it's a continual learning process. I will never say I have this down. But, you know, I've been at it for 13 years and they passed remote school, so I must be doing something okay.
Great. Thank you. And he's so beautiful. If you are not friends with her or want to follow her, she does some amazing updates and posts about both of her beautiful children. And it's just so inspirational. And she's so humble and grateful to be raising them. So that is quite an inspiration. So Sonia Millner Addams, I don't know what to call you today, pastor, or whatever.
Sonia's fun, and Millner is actually my maiden name, right, and I use that. But yeah, I am an author, as she just said, and I am a pastor and an entrepreneur, all of that. But I have two sons. I'm a sibling of two brothers, and then I wanted a girl so bad. Oh my God. I even claimed the second one to be a girl. It didn't happen. And so I remember my mom in love, Sean's mom, my husband, said, God must see something in you to raise young boys. And he gave you two young boys, which were my miracle kids, because doctors said I couldn't have kids. So that's even another reason why I know it's a miracle to have them. But Solomon is 18. He just turned 18 in May. And he's about to go to Yale, which I'll share a little bit about when we talk about how God just did that. And then Simeon is 13. He just turned 13 yesterday. So 5 years apart. So yeah, it's a joy to raise them, and we're going to talk about that. So yeah, that's they're PK kids. So, you know, I was a PK, so but I'm excited to have this conversation, and I think it's gonna be a lot that comes out of this today, this eye-opening. So thank you for inviting me.
And then your oldest, can you tell us a little about your oldest and your shirt that you're
Oh
wearing?
yes, I'm a proud Yale mom, and he also was the valedictorian of his class, and so and I was very intentional about raising a Black boy not to be a statistic. And so, yeah, we don't know when school is going to start or how it's going to start, but he's excited about that. And I'm excited to raise a young man who I know is going to make a difference in the world, even in the world that we see now. And we've had some conversations, and we'll share a little bit of that as we continue our conversation. So
Awesome.
I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, Tracy, another Akronite and good friend of mine. Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm here in Atlanta, Tracy Washington, too, from Akron, Ohio, and I'm a business owner. I have a leadership consulting practice, and I also coach professional women of faith. And I'm also certified in grief recovery. So as you can imagine, this is a time where that skill set is heavily needed. My sons are adult sons. So they are 35, and my youngest will be 32 tomorrow, June 1st, as a matter of fact. And I have 3 grandchildren. So I'm glad to be here to be able to add to the conversation, kind of being on the other side of parenting and what it was like, raising sons. So I'm excited to be here to contribute to the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. And then finally, we have Nashville in the house, Joyce Veronica.
That's the shirt.
And my shirt. Yes, thank you.
I'm Joyce Veronica, and I am from South Carolina, but I've lived in Nashville now for 18 years. I am the proud mom of 2 sons. Bradley will be 17 in July, and William will be 14. Well, he's 13 now, but he'll be 14. So I have a rising senior and a rising freshman. And I definitely consider it truly a blessing to have them. I'm divorced. I won't say I'm a single mom. I'm divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely interesting because, like you, Sonia, I was like, the second one's gotta be a girl. It's gotta be a girl.
Right.
And I had William, but I had William because I love Bradley so much, if that makes sense. Like me and my sister are very, very close. So I wanted my sons to have that relationship, and so it's definitely a blessing. I could talk all day about them, but it's we learn something new every day. And of course, I'm sure everyone knows no two children are the same.
That's right.
They're all very, very different. And how you say you have to love them different.
Yeah.
Love them same, but love them different. But I'm very proud, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own fitness company, been in corporate life for a million years, and I'm so excited about owning my own company now. So
Great. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for that introduction. I want to go ahead and dive really quickly into this, and again, to set the stage on the power of conversations. Earlier this week, again, I was grieving and just falling into this depression about just, watching the George Floyd, the situation in Central Park. And we're already dealing with the pandemic and the light that has been shined on the issues in race that come out even with the pandemic.
Right.
So feeling really, really, really heavy. And I spoke to one of my mentors, Justice Leah Ward Sears, who may be watching. And she, she deals a lot with, she has a lot of good advice. And so I was sharing with her just how I was feeling. And one of the things she said was, change, we like to look at these big things that happen with change, to make changes, but really change comes often in small conversations, one-on-one with people in groups. And so I'm like, I've got to start a conversation. So thank you, ladies. So I want to hear from each of you briefly before I get into some deeper questions. How were you all feeling this week when you heard or saw the video of George Floyd, and when you heard or saw the instance that happened in Central Park? Having sons, what were some of your emotions that you were processing?
I can say I was embarrassed.
That is something I learned this week as some of my white friends reached out to me, maybe 2 or 3. And as I started conversations with them, I was surprised to hear that there was embarrassment, because it never even occurred to me that that would be something they would feel.
Oh, well, there should be.
Mhm.
There should be.
Okay.
For me, it was just like anger. I've been angry about it for a while, and we all have. But you know how they say it's the nail in the coffin, or the whatever that just tips it over. It was like the last straw for me. And this anger came out of me that, I mean, even to the point where I felt like I wanted to hurt somebody. And that's why I told my husband, I understand how they feel, because I have the Holy Spirit, I have a restrainer. And so, but the emotions of anger, if you don't have that restrainer, you don't have a moral compass to just really keep you, or if you don't know what to do with it, then it's not right, but you can empathize with why the anger is coming out, and we don't need to do that, because we need to find another way. But anger, and then of course grieving came, and it's all going back and forth, crying, just all over the place. And then for like you, it's like, but God, what can I do? And then you go into, what can I do? And so those were my initial emotions. And I think I couldn't even sleep the first night. I mean, I was just up, just like, and so I've calmed down a little bit now, but it's still, I'm glad the anger is still there a little bit, because the Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Anger is a source of fuel to help you to bring resolution. So I'm using that as a point to jump on, to do what I have been called to do, or what God is leading me to do. So I don't want it to go away, because that's what we do. Things happen, then a few weeks ago, and we back to normal. We forgot about.
Right.
And I'm like, don't let this kindle die in me, because in order for me to keep moving and keep doing the things I need to do, I need that stirring in me. So that's where I've been.
Yeah. Yeah. What about some other emotions?
I've been sad. That's the anger, but also just very, very sad. And I also had one of my white friends, and she asked me, Joyce, how's your conversation been different with your sons? Or are you praying different? And I'm like, when I had them, my prayer has always been different. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I was having a conversation today, and I said, I'm not white, right? And I'm also not a black man, male, right? So we have different fears, different things, issues we come in contact with. But the first thing I did was pray, because I don't think you should do anything before seeking God first in it, because there's gonna, you just I gotta seek Him first.
Right.
Then also, with my boys, I don't want them to have hate.
Yeah.
It's gonna make you hate. You know what I mean? Because anger, there's lots of emotions. How do I help them through that process?
Yes.
Not hating.
Yes.
Right? Because we don't live in a bubble, right? We're definitely a melting pot. So how do we work towards, better change and, loving through this process?
Yes.
So,
yeah. That's some good things came out of that. I'm gonna circle back to that in just a second. So Tracy, as a mom of 2 adult 30-something-year-old men out there, what was some of your feelings?
I were concerned as a mother, they say when your children get older, they're on your heart. I know that I feel confident they are equipped to handle whatever comes their way, but there's still this part of me that says, wow, every time this happens, here we go again. This could be my son.
Yes.
This could be my son. This could be my brother. I have 7 brothers. And when I
Wow.
think about them moving around, I'm thinking this could be my sons, my brother, my husband, you know, and so I'm like, here we go again. And so like Joyce said, you know, praying about it, because I feel like, you know, the emotion of anger is telling about something.
Yeah.
It's telling, it's notifying us of some underlying issue. So we are angry, but at the same time, if we keep going deeper, we don't feel heard and acknowledged. And
Yeah.
I think with the just the fact that we have to work so hard, we have to, you know, just to be noticed, just to be understood,
Exactly.
and just to be, you know, like, we're here. My skin color is dark. It's dark, but that I'm human. I'm human. So I had to kind of weep a little bit, and I had to, you know, do some self-care. We've already got so much going on with the pandemic, and then the Central Park issue. And, you know, I got angry. I've been having conversations like many of you have with women, white women. And I'm always trying to come from the seek first to understand rather than to be understood. But when I'm explaining it, it's like, if you care about me and I'm your friend, if you care about me and I'm your friend, you should care about what I care about. And the fact that you can't wrap your arms around this and you're deflecting to the other things that are going on, that's an issue for me. That's an issue for me. And so it kind of, you know, created this whole array of emotions this week. And I've been off of, you know, Facebook and Instagram just to kind of practice some soul care for myself in the last few days. I see, but I'm like, I will limit my time, because I understand we have to protect our emotional energy.
Right. Yeah.
And so we can respond, not react.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sarah, I want to circle back to you, because you said the embarrassed part, which
For sure.
I'm learning that. So what did you think about, or have you, because I think out of all of us, your children are the youngest on the piano.
They're 10 and 13.
So, and Jude is 10, correct? He's the youngest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you, and we're going to talk about this, go around the circle, have you felt a need to talk to him yet about how he may be perceived?
Oh, we talk about it all the time.
Okay.
So
did this spark another conversation, or
100%?
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time, because it's not just these terrible things happening. Clearly I don't look like my kids. I get asked by our pediatrician of 13 years, the secretary, if I'm their babysitter, if I belong to them. Like, it happens. So it is a constant conversation. Everything is a teachable moment. Everything is important. For us, everything's intentional. You know, we have practiced pullover drills. One of my very best friends is a police officer, and I have very honest conversations with her. She has introduced Jude to the police officers in our neighborhood, in the district. We're extremely intentional about it.
Yeah.
You are a young Black man, and only going to get taller, only going to get stronger.
Yeah.
Only going to be perceived a certain way. And I can't protect that all the time.
Yeah.
I can educate that. I can equip that as much as possible. And then, you know, it's a little bit of rolling the dice.
Yes. Yeah. It kind of reminds me, as you all know, I think in all of our cities, riots have been breaking out, and our mayor in Atlanta, who is a Black female and a mom of 4, gave a very moving speech when all the riots were breaking out. And one of the things she said was, I called my son.
I saw
Where
it.
are you? Because I can't help you. If you are, no Black boys should be out right now, because I can't help you. And kind of going back to Sarah's point, you know, and that's for every mom to some degree. There's only so much you can do,
Right.
and then you have to just trust. But then when you're raising a son that you know is a target, will be a target for some people, a lot of people, or will be judged a certain way just because of, and sometimes it's not even intentional, it's unconscious.
That's the scariest
Right.
part.
Yes.
That's where
Right.
where
Yes.
the nervousness comes in.
Right.
Yes.
Is for me, it's the people who don't even mean to be.
Right. You know what to do with people who are crazy, like,
Right.
or, you know, are
Right.
hateful. You kind of know how, but it's,
I know how to react if you're coming at me.
right.
I don't know
Right.
how to react if you're down here.
Right. Right.
Mhm. That's good.
So, let's talk about the talk. The talk. So Sarah, just a quick question before we go around and talk about the talk and the things that mothers of Black sons have to tell their sons. How old was Jude when you first had that talk?
When he could speak.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
From day one. It's just a fact.
And I will say before, we just think that Sarah's married to another white person and they have no contact.
Oh yeah, he's Black too.
Her husband is Black. So it's not, she does have some context on what to say.
Right.
Her son.
Well, yeah, and I research, get as much information as I can from Black family and friends to my police officer friends to how do you tell them? It is your hands on the steering wheel or the dash, make eye contact. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. Get arrested. I will find you a better attorney than the charge is. Get arrested, but get home.
Yes. That's one of the messages.
Alive,
that we
alive.
constantly get home alive.
Yep.
Get home alive.
Mhm.
Yep.
And trust that the police officers that our neighborhood is primarily white. It's one way in, one way out. It's at the end of Merriman Valley. And we have a large number of police officers in the neighborhood. And you better believe I have introduced my children to every single one of them. And they know where they live and they know their address. And they're going to know when they're riding their bike that they're not doing something, you know, that they shouldn't be doing. And my kids know to respect authority. They're going to respect the person coming to do a meter reading in the backyard the same way they're going to respect a police officer.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they can't get into a jam, however.
Right. What are some of the other things that we have to make sure our sons know?
Can I say something real quick, kind of piggyback on that? I live in the suburbs of Nashville, and my youngest, who's 13, who, you know, we in a pandemic, hadn't been to the barbershop, right? So mom has twisted his hair. I mean, he's cute. I mean,
now that I could use some help with, ladies. We're in trouble at my house.
And this is how he calls our neighborhood. Well, mama, we live in the mini white community. That's what he calls it, the mini white. Okay, that's fine. Mama, we should be safe. Well, I was on a call, he went for a walk, right? And this right after, like the day after, was the incident with the young man that got killed in the neighborhood.
Ahmad.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me tell you, freaks me out because he had gotten lost. He was walking for like an hour and he's like, Mama, I need to put my Google Maps in. I can't, because it's a big neighborhood. And so I was like, William, you can't go out anymore by yourself. And he was like, but Mama, why? And I said, because unfortunately, people are going to look at you and they're not going to automatically assume that you live in this neighborhood.
Right.
It is unfortunate. He was like, but Mama, you know, at my dad's house. I'm like, but you're not at your dad's house this week. You know, you're at your mommy's house. And even though you're a great kid, you and your brother, people are still how we're living right now.
No one's going to ask for his resume of whether or not he's a great kid.
There you go.
Right.
They're just going to look at you.
Yeah.
And I can't, Lord, you know, I can't have that because everybody be in jail. I'm just, everybody be in jail. But I'm just being honest. So it was, you know, it's a whole nother level of, you know, fear. And when he had that conversation, you know, literally before they were 5, I need you to understand.
100%.
You're a black boy. and things are different. Unfortunately, things are different. The world is only going to see you. The first thing they're going to see is the color of your skin. And then they might ask questions later. Maybe.
Yeah.
I started with my oldest very young too. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't want, because my youngest son, he's a little bit more emotional, and he fears some things in a way just because of his age. So it's so much in the world that is not good. I didn't want to overwhelm him, but this incident started the conversation with him. He's not fully aware of everything, but giving him a context and letting him watch some of the things on TV, he's beginning to understand it more. So, but like you were saying, Sarah, I mean, and Joyce, I mean, he can't go outside. It's just like, you got to go outside with your kids now, which is crazy. We got to walk to the store with them. We live right, we're in walking distance, where we used to get on our bikes,
right,
and ride and do all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So it's just not safe. And whenever my oldest goes out, he's driving, it's like, okay, text me when you get there.
Yes.
If you get stopped, let me know. And he was like, Mom, you being over. I need to know this. And then I'm all nervous, while he's gone. I'm praying in the spirit, like, Lord, cover him, keep him, because these are the times that we live in. And so and we have those conversations. One point of hope is that he does say some of his peers are not as hateful as our generation and maybe our parents' generation. And so when he told me that gave me a sense of hope to say, okay, well, maybe your generation and the generation, they will begin to bring some change. Although he did say some of them with the privilege, and especially he's about to go to Yale. So we're having a whole nother conversation, because that's going to be, he's been at a primarily Black school. So now this is going to be a whole different climate. So we've been having this conversation as well. So just having what we call real talk.
That's right.
And fortunately, he had a great history teacher who did not whitewash history. And she was white, and she gave the truths of history and it really opened him up to even want to do something with inequities and to do something with bringing change in our community, which I appreciate. So it's been good that other people have engaged him in the conversation, which I feel is divine as a source of prayer, getting him in the right places, in the right environments to get the right conversations.
Yeah.
One more thing, when you said inequity, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. This is a conversation I've had with my daughter, which is a different, thing. But the inequity that exists is not just in a police department. It's far beyond that. It's the judicial system. Because the bottom line is, get arrested, don't get arrested. Good cop, bad cop. That doesn't matter. It matters what judge you're in front of, who's going to be an older white male, and you're going to get off if you have money. That is one of the bigger inequities in this country. It's not just race. It's social, it's economic, it's racial, it's all of it.
All of it.
It's a system. Absolutely.
That's the really broken system.
Yeah. And we're going to get a little bit, circle back to some of that at the end when we start talking a little bit about solutions as well. What about some other little things that we sometimes have to remind our sons, such as, so for example, boys naturally, this is something I really struggle with. Boys naturally are impulsive. They react more, they're jumpier, they move around, which you can't
Can't do
You can't
that.
do that in public when you have a Black son. Like, calm down, be still. And it's like this, trying to get them to walk this fine line of, we want them to be proud men that are smart and confident, but then there's, you kind of like, you don't want to tell them to shut it down, but it's like, you got to watch how confident you are if you are stopped by a police, or if you are in a situation where there could be trouble. And because first of all, because they're a boy, Black, white, or whatever, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, there is a certain amount of ego,
testosterone,
pride, leadership.
Right.
So how do you monitor that type? You want them to have that, but then walk that fine line of not too much in the wrong situation.
I can
And
speak
I
to
think
that.
you have adults.
Yeah, you have to teach, for me, teaching my sons how to navigate different scenarios. Here you need to have a healthy self-esteem. And yeah, there are places when you're with your buddies, you can get arrogant and confident, and when you're playing sports, because my youngest son played sports for Arkansas State, and so he was away from me in a whole different town where there were, he's in the South, and so I try to always teach them how to navigate in different scenarios, different scenes. So you're exposed to this group of people over here. This is how you act. You act like you have sense. When I say that, I mean, I'm not telling you to act white, as some people accuse us of. I'm like, act like you have sense.
Act
talk
like you've been somewhere before.
Yeah, act. Talk intelligently. They're not perfect sons, but I try to teach them when you're in certain environments, this is how you need to behave, because that's being an adult. We can't go everywhere and be the exact same person that we are. We interact with people at home and our families different than we would at work.
Right.
So you have to know when to turn that on and off. So, and then telling them what to do, what to say, but then why it matters. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? It matters because some people will not, the rules are different for you.
Yes. I had to
the rules are different.
my son, the rules are different.
The rules are different. It doesn't make it right. I didn't make the rules, but this is just the world we live in. And I think equipping them with those tools to say, when you get pulled over by a white police officer, or you get into this incident at school, first of all, I'm all about fairness. Were you out of line? Yes, let's get that. Because
I always assume they are.
The Black mothers, we know we'll go to the school in a heartbeat.
Right.
It's like, don't make me have to come up to that school.
That's right.
White moms do that too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, did what were the rules? Did you follow the rules? Because at certain places the rules are different, and you have to abide by the rules in that situation. Now if there's something where you feel like your personal values are violated, then that's another discussion. And my sons came home to me. I remember my youngest son being in, I want to say, middle school, 6th, 7th grade, and a teacher came. He was a substitute. No, was he? I think he was a substitute teacher, and he was filling in at a public school. And he said something to the class about, you people, because it was predominantly Black school. You people, this is why I teach in private school, because you people, blah 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 blah. And my son came home and told me that. Well, being the Black mama, we're on the phone. I'm calling the principal. I was just like, I would like a conversation with you, and I would like a conversation with that substitute teacher. Because how dare you group these children into this, like y'all, like you all are, like, you teach in private school as if it's a difference in the education that you would provide for them as you would in a private school. So I think, teaching them their, how to tell when their values have been violated. In that case, my son felt like his values were violated. He came home and told me, and I addressed it. But there's also, these are the rules in these situations and scenarios. And so you have to navigate in and out. And so you have to expose them
Right.
to those conversations, expose them
Right.
to those people who can then, you know, contribute to that. Like, this is how you are supposed to act when you are stopped by the police or when you are accused of something. You may not be wrong, but someone is accusing you of being wrong, you know, being wrong. So
Right.
this is how you respond to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. And as a, oh, go ahead.
I had a situation with my youngest son when he first started going to this newer school where it's very diverse, but it's predominantly white. And he wants to go to Chick-fil-A after school on Fridays and hang out with his friends. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Text me when you leave the building, text me when you get there, you know, all of that. And so when I picked him up, I noticed there was a police officer there, lots of kids around. And I'm like, Trenton, why is the police there? And he said, oh, I think Chick-fil-A called the police because there were so many of us there. And, you know, it was just a mixed group. And he said, and someone started getting loud or there was some trouble. But I went and told the police officer that it was not the kids from Chamblee. It was another group of children. I said, you did what? But in his mind, it was perfectly okay and logical to approach this police officer and break down what was happening in the crowd. And I'm like, Trenton, do not do that. Like, I had to explain, like, you can't, you know, in his mind it was fine, but the rules are different. And you need to know when things are appropriate and when they're not. And you approaching a police officer was not, to explain the situation. So I think that's a good point in reminding our children, and, you know, specifically Black sons. I think all children need to know that, but Black sons especially, that you need to know when to turn it on, turn it off. You need to know your situations, your surroundings. And I love the fact of knowing, having a good sense of when your rights are being violated.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I wanted to also say, because it is a fine line, and you want your kids to have pride, you want them to be confident, you want them to own who they are. And so, of course, us having spiritual values, what I've had to tell Solomon is that you are a king, you are King Solomon. But just like Jesus was, he had all authority, but the kenosis is where he emptied himself and he became humble. And I said, humility is the greatest thing that you can carry, even though you may know some things, you can stand tall, but when you get in front of certain people, be humble and hear them, and God will give you a way. And so, and for him, that was very hard, because even early on, he's always been an intelligent young man. And when he was in third grade, he was telling the teacher some things that were wrong. And it was a Caucasian teacher. And she thought he was being disrespectful. He probably was being a little arrogant, a little prideful. I said, prideful and disrespect are two different things. I've taught in the inner city. You don't know disrespect. You're not being cursed out. You're not being threatened. So I had to teach him to be humble. And I've seen over the years how his humility, how God is really building humility in him. And I think that keeps our Black men from cowering down of their pride and their I don't even know how to really say it, but them being strong Black men and not cowering and being passive, but at the same time knowing when to humble themselves and be meek, and then knowing how to rise and when to rise, and being able to navigate through those different places. So that has been really helpful for Solomon. And Simeon is just the type of person, he loves everybody. So that's where I have to keep my hands on, because he'll go with anybody, you know, and he thinks everybody is good right now to a certain extent. So I don't even know how I'm going to even teach him to really, know that unfortunately everybody is not innately good.
Right.
and he's going to have to understand that. And so I'm sure God is going to, like we were saying earlier, every kid is different, so God will give us what we need for each child. And I know God is going to give me with this conversation as well, as we're just having it now. And so I'm going to have to really be led to how to help him still be strong and still. And that's the main thing when Solomon goes to Yale. I don't want him to get lost in, because I went to HBCU, and one of the things for me, it gave me confidence. Yeah. And my husband went to PWI, and he said he lost his confidence. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's another thing as well. But God always gives us instructions. That's why,
right,
you know, at this time we got to lean on the Holy Spirit like never before.
Right. So let's talk a little bit. So we talked about police and teaching them how to react around police. We've talked a little bit about even like the physical appearance. We talked a little bit about that, like with the hair, you know, sometimes, you know, they want to wear their hair a certain way. I'm like, no, because I know sometimes the perception will be one way, and during a pandemic and not being able to get haircuts, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, we got to figure something out. And sometimes the way they wear, you know, after Trayvon Martin, I'm like, do not put that hood on your head ever.
No,
it's funny you funny you say that, but funny you say that. Jude, part of his autism spectrum stuff is he prefers a covering over him at all times. When we're at home, it's a blanket. Little St. V lets him wear a hoodie, and he wears the hood up every day. He's protected in that school, but I wouldn't let him walk from the bus stop to my house with his hood up.
Yes. And that's just an example of like, I don't think sometimes like white moms have to worry about that. Like we have to worry about.
Of course they don't.
Have to wear.
Yeah, they don't. I used to back when the pants sagging kind of first showed up on the scene. That's when I was raising my sons, and of course, you know, like most moms, they're like, no, you can't do that. But you know, we can't be with them all the time. So I used to tell them,
I
like,
yank their pants up.
If I see you like that, if I come to the school, I would make pop-in visits. This is another thing I want to say to moms. Don't make threats that you don't plan on following up on.
Yep.
Don't make threats. When I said I was coming to the school, I would pop up at the school unannounced. And I meant that. My yes is yes and my no is no. I'm like, if I pop up to the school unannounced and you got your pants down, I think you're going to take them off right there, because obviously you don't wear them.
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure they got some stuff, you know, they'll watch this and like, oh, Mom, what is she talking about? They got some stuff off, you know, they got it off. But I tried to teach them the way that you dress has a lot to, you know, to do with how people perceive you. And there was something, my son still reminds me of this, even at 35, I used to tell them, dress for where you're going, not where you've been.
Yes. Yeah.
And whatever that looks like. Now I'm all into creative expression, express who you are, because I don't, you know, want to put people in a box. And you know, when we're put in boxes, it's because we care about what they think. And so we've got to figure out what is that fine line between what they think and how you should be showing up. There's this really fine line there. You know, you mentioned the hair. And I remember specifically having a conversation with my son when he first started twisting his hair. And, you know, this was, I don't know, 2006, 2007. And he was just graduating from college. And I said, you know, you might, college. And I said, you may want to, you know, you're going into the corporate world now. And that's not, you know, quote unquote, that might not be the acceptable thing depending on where you're going. And, you know, this is a conversation I had, you know, more than 10 years ago. So he disobeyed me, thank goodness. He did, which I'm glad he did, because he was just like, I want to wear my hair like this. Now, you know, he's got dreads down through his back, and, you know, it's in now, it's vogue now to do that. But I just remember me being programmed with this, you know, we're not accepted if we do this. And we're not, you know, we have to follow this model. And I think we're getting away from that thank God we're getting away from that, because the millennials, they're like, we're not growing up with all those restrictions.
Right.
And so I think we have to find that really fine line between what we teach our boys about creative expression, being yourself, not putting them in a box, but also, again, what does this mean when you're pulled over? What does this mean when, how can you express yourself with confidence without being, being seen as a threat? Being seen as a threat. So how can you do that? So there's that fine line there of how to do that. And I think it's communication, teaching them how to communicate effectively, that, the relationships. I'm big on relationships. What that looks like to make sure that you're not singled out because of what you're wearing, or how your hair looks. When you think somebody walks in a store, they look, quote unquote, like a thug, when that's our culture. They're not thugs. That's our culture.
Right.
Braids and things like that. So I think we just have to figure out what that line is and teach them. But then again, what that looks like in different scenarios.
What about, so this one might be a little uncomfortable, Sarah.
Oh boy.
What's you're in it, so.
I'm in it to win it now, Levitica.
So what do we tell our sons about dating outside of their race? Is there times I can
number one, he's never gonna marry someone quite as wonderful as me. But no, I do ask him, because his best friend at school is a little Black girl named Hope, and she's adorable and lovely and looks out for him. The flip side of that coin is the majority of his family and friends, like in the neighborhood, are all white. So I ask him, I'm like, who do you think's pretty? Right. Or do you think, so-and-so, a boy, is pretty? I don't care who you love, as long as they treat you well. I mean, I would be surprised if he didn't end up dating a white person, just because he's, so we do so much together based on his medical needs and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's where we go.
Well, I think he might be a little young yet, but and Joyce, I want you to pick up on this. But part of one of the conversations I had to have this week, especially with the Central Park situation, is, first of all, with all women, all girls,
but now it's scary.
No is no. But if you are dating outside of your race, specifically white, she needs to understand.
Oh, for sure.
And you need to make sure boundaries are set and things are very clear, because things can be misinterpreted.
I can tell you that just in my husband's and my relationship over whatever, a million years. There's, for example, years ago, pre-kids, we went to Target to buy bikes, because apparently we thought we were going to be healthy and thin, and that never happened. And he wanted to ride them home all the way from Target in Fair Lawn to where we live in Merriman Hills. And there was no way. So we were having like a discussion. I'm like, you're crazy. We're both going to have heart attacks. We're going to die. The car is going to be left here. This is nuts. A police officer pulled up and asked me if I was okay.
Wow. That's what I mean.
And I'm married to the man.
Yes.
And we had just bought matching bikes, for God's sake, at Target. Yeah. Like, we're not in a knockdown, drag out fight. I'm telling him we're both too fat to ride bikes all the way home. That's it.
It's that unconscious bias showing up.
Joyce?
Yep.
Right. It's the
didn't ask him if he was
assumption.
okay.
Yeah.
Didn't ask him anything. Ma'am, are you all right?
Okay, Joyce.
All right, so Lee, you know what you get when you talk to me, right? You get the raw and dirty. I'm just gonna put it out there. You get the raw and dirty. I'm from Sumter, South Carolina. We're gonna put that out there too. Raised by my grandmama. Put that out there too. Sandra, get ready. You brace yourself for what I'm about to do.
No, because I think I'm on the same page.
And I can say this because I've had this conversation with both boys, of course, 16 and 13, but I most recently had this conversation no lie, last week,
Yes.
my youngest,
Yeah.
last week. And we talk about everything. So we were talking about, he saw these two Black females walking across the street. He said, "Oh, Mama, them are some beautiful Black women." And I said, "William, why do you think they're beautiful?" He said, "Because look at their skin. It's just chocolate and smooth. It's just pretty." I mean, okay, so let me just tell you, he likes older women. He's 13, but he likes older women. But he was very intentional about it, right? So then he was like, "Well, Mama, well, what do you think? Do you think they were pretty?" I said, "I think they were beautiful." Then he'd asked, and I wasn't even ready for this question. He said, "So, Mama, would it matter who I date?" I said, "It's interesting you asked me that conversation, because it was direct. It was direct." And I said, "Well, so let me tell you a story about me when I grew up. I didn't know there was an issue in the world with race. I didn't. I'm from a small community. I went to Hillcrest, and it was very mixed, very diverse, right? Everybody loved each other. What I thought, right? Everybody loved each other. Right. And I'll never forget, I had this conversation with one of my grandparents, and she looked at me and she said, "Let me just tell you, Joyce." She was very direct. She said, "You can't bring a white boy home." And I was just like, "Well, what do you mean? We love everybody." I know it kind of got definitely quiet, but this conversation we had, and she said, "They're not gonna look at you different. He may love you, but his parents might not. His aunts and uncles might not. And I don't want to put you in a situation where the world is not gonna understand you, and you get called the N-word and you can't defend yourself. Because I don't ever want anyone to make you feel less than because you're beautiful the way you are." And that was a conversation that I had at the age of 17 with it is what it is. So me and William had that conversation. He was like, "Well, Mama," I said, "I can't," and he actually made that point. "I'm gonna love who I love." "Yes, you are." I said, "But you need to understand the other side of that. I can't choose for you, but you do need to be aware of everybody who doesn't look like you might not love you for you. So it's not just gonna be you, it's gonna be all of us."
100%.
I mean, and honestly, in the school system, I had a conversation with one of the principals, and she was like, "Well, be very clear," because we had a young girl dating a Black guy, got caught, told her daddy that he raped her. He got kicked out of school, got put in jail. Did he do anything wrong? No, he didn't. But this white girl said he did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the world we live in.
It's a fear.
It's a fear, and I'm like, I know why you can't change who you love, but we need to understand what that all looks like.
You need to mitigate your circumstances and know your risk. And
know your risk.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
So I know we've already been on for an hour, so I'm gonna start wrapping up.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Really? It went that fast?
But let's talk about the rewards and the responsibility. When I ran into I met this stranger, African woman on the street a few years ago, and we were just chatting, and she had asked if I was a mom. I said, yes, I have 2 boys. And so she grabbed my hand and she looked at me in the eyes and she said, "Do you understand the privilege and the responsibility you have raising 2 Black boys?" And I kind of was like, "Oh yeah, but I really didn't." And we can start talking a little bit about solutions and things too as we start this conversation. But as I'm older now and I see a little bit more of the racism that is throughout the world, I see the injustices, I see things that have even caused or contributed to some of the injustices, such as single parents raising children with no fathers in the home. I realize the responsibility I have to really put my best foot forward, as you mentioned, Sonia, of not letting my child be a statistic, because it will affect someone, some mother, some woman, some other child. So let's talk about the rewards and the responsibility that we all acknowledge of raising these sons and the privilege of it.
I can speak to that because I'm on the other, like I said, on the other side of it. And I am extremely, extremely, extremely proud of my sons. We have, I think a lot of it comes from my own healing and childhood things, or things that I didn't want to another generation to repeat. The trajectory of our family was kind of, scattered. And so my purpose was to always keep, people close and tight, but to equip them for the world that they were going to be facing.
Yeah.
And so when I look back now at where they are, they're both college graduates. They both have six-figure, jobs. And I always say, you're welcome. I was just like, you're welcome, no record, those things. I'm a proud mom, but I'm a godly proud mom, number one, because if it had not been for praying mothers, praying grandmothers, before when I was out doing whatever, my mom was praying, and, she was teaching them things that I didn't know to teach them at that age. And so when I look back and see what they're doing, they say that the best way to know how good of a parent you were is to watch how your children parent.
Right.
I'm a grandmother of 3 now. And so when I look at how they're parenting, and, I'm like, this is the reward. This is it right
That's
here,
awesome.
to see what they're doing. And, and I tell them about the mistakes that I made. I'm like, I didn't know that. Well, I didn't know this when I was raising you all, because I'm into emotional health and all these other things. Now they're like, why are you telling them that? You didn't tell us that when we were growing up. I'm like, because I didn't know. I didn't know about these. He said, you didn't care about us like that. When I was like, I didn't know that these were things that I should have been paying attention to.
Right.
But what, now that I see that they, I can admit, we have had discussions, heart-to-heart discussions, where I have apologized for things that I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I didn't know these things. And this may have, injured you in some way. And just being open, about what I didn't know, and the things that have been passed down to me that I may have, incorrectly or erroneously passed on to them, that maybe didn't serve us so well. So I think part of the reward is looking to see, okay, did I do a good job? You can't beat yourself up as a parent, because there is a small window of time where I did I'm like, oh, I feel so guilty. If I had only done this, I used to tell them, don't have kids before you're 30.
Yeah.
And neither one of them listened. And so, but now that, I look back, I remember thinking, gosh, I wanted them to get further ahead in life and experience these things. But when I look at what they've done and the responsibility, how, they never, they wanted to almost prove that they could do it without my help.
Right.
And because of that, they excelled at what they've done. And I look back at that and say they were equipped by what they learned. It's not that I could help them, but it's that they could help themselves because they knew what to do.
And I think a big reward is that they are, as you have equipped them, and my sons as well, I'm just now coming to the place that I'm understanding the reward of it. Though my mother-in-law told me that years ago, now I'm seeing that my sons are going to be part of the solution.
Yes.
And so that is a great reward to know that I have been very intentional about things that I've done. Like, he was in the 3rd grade when I was getting that calls every day. And I made a decision, my husband and I, that we took him out of that school, took him out of that environment, and put him in a place where he could flourish. And also, for me now, I have more empathy for Black boys in general, wherever environment that I'm in. I've been an inner city school teacher. And so when I go in, because I raised Black boys, and like just recently I taught high school 2 years ago, I had a remedial class, and I taught those boys differently. I looked at them differently. I knew, because I had boys, it gave me a different vantage point of how to reach them with love, and also with sternness, with also helping them to feel good about themselves. So raising Black boys has just given me a different outlet in life. And so it's been a great reward. And now seeing my son graduate from high school, and then seeing him have those the morals and the values and the philosophy and belief systems that we've instilled in him, and knowing he's going to take that out into the world and make the world a better place. That is a great reward. And just having conversations with him this week when I'm crying, and he's helping to dry my tears by his conversation, like the hope that he has. And I'm like, God, thank you for giving me this, and them being a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And so it's a joy. At the same time, you know, we have that protective thing there. We're gonna always have that. But I just believe, you know, as he told me, you know, Mom, I think things are going to be different for our generation. And that gives me hope in that, and for other mothers that are out there dealing with, you know, this. And, you know, I don't know if you guys saw the video where the 46-year-old was talking to a 31-year-old, and the 31-year-old was talking to the 16-year-old. He said, we got to find another way. He said, I was angry. 46-year-old has been angry. The 31-year-old been angry. Now the 16-year-old out there angry, doing the same thing. He said, we got to find another way. We got to find another way. And he's saying to that young man, you all have got to find another way, because what we've done, obviously it hadn't worked. We still here where Dr. King was, you know, and it's just as bad to me. I mean, we have made some progress. I don't want to negate that. We have. But we still have a long way to go. And so in order, and you talked about the systemic racism is where we really got to get inside of, like you talked about the judges, that right there. And it's going to take young people who are going to be the next judges, who are going to be the next politician, who's going to be the next pastors, who's going to be the next, they got to have a different mindset. And because unfortunately, our generation and our parents,
but
we can try to help them to change, but I don't know if they're going to change.
But this is where I have a problem with that. I mean, because I'm going to vote. I don't want this to turn into a political conversation, but I'm going to vote, and I do believe, you know, court systems and all of that, police. I understand that a lot of that is part of the problem, but I also don't feel like you can mandate morality.
Correct.
So it's like, I can't. So what that you have to hire him, or you have to do this? I don't want you to still hate him just because he looks a certain way. So to me, it's how do we change mindsets so that he's not, just because you can't throw him in jail, or you can't kill him now on the street. I still want you to value him, to realize that his life.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that young people hopefully will have a different mindset. So when they're sitting in those seats, they'll be sitting in those seats with a different philosophy,
different mindset,
different belief system. So that's my point, because the people that are sitting in the seats now, they're even if we're trying to change their mindsets, the likelihood of that happening is few and far between. Although some people, this may be a wake-up call and they are trying to change, but many are not. They're just going to go to their grave believing the way they believe. So I guess my point is that this generation, when they take those seats, that they'll come with a different mindset, and that's what our hope has to be, and our belief. And so that's what I'm kind of saying, and I'm hoping that it will happen. We know racism is going to be here forever because it's a sin, and sins are going to be a part of the world, but we still have to have hope that things can shift in some way if the mindset shifts.
Yes.
I think it's a heart issue first. I think it's a heart issue. I think it's a heart issue and a hurt issue.
It is.
Because if we see people in, you know, as I go to, Lee, you go there. We go to one of the most culturally diverse churches in America. I don't know exactly where on the scale they are, but they're in like the top 10.
Yeah.
And I purposely chose that church for one. I'm like, this has got to be what heaven looks like, number one.
Oh.
I was just like, this has got to be represented, and the fact that, I needed to put myself in those places where people were different than me, so I can start to, have that experience of not judging, different people who may do things differently than I do. And I had to do some hard work myself. And so as I think about what it's going to take to change it around, I think the younger people, millennials and backwards, are more open to those conversations because they have the call out culture and social media and all these other things that they're doing, and they're very vocal with how they feel. I'm not okay, I'm offended. We didn't talk like that. Nobody cared that you were offended. Back then, nobody cared. We were coming up. It's like, well, hey, get over it. But they're very vocal. So I think they're being forced to look at it in different ways, and they have to confront it. But when you can't confront it and you're not self-aware enough to make the changes that are necessary, that's a heart issue that you're unwilling to face. And maybe you've had we've all had brokenness, but maybe there's something that you just choose to deflect, and you will not accept this person. You will not look at this person's resume. You won't hire this person just because there's a threat because they have more degrees than you. They are smarter. They come from a different background. I remember when I was growing up, I was a young mother, very young, public assistance. And I remember my mother told me, when you go down there to apply, don't dress like you have money. And I remember thinking, I didn't know that back then, but I thought about that mentality of we have to kind of play down in order to be accepted. Yeah. And I think this is where we are, where we're seeing a crossroads of, I don't have to, why do I have to? So it's you against me again. Right. I have to look at you as if, you're going to judge me based on, the color of my skin, what I'm dressed, what my hair looks like, and all these other things, but you're not qualifying me based on what I bring to the table. Right. And so because we have to work so hard at that, I think it's a heart issue that's at play there. It's like, who are you trying to protect? Are you trying to protect something, or you just don't want to face this part of who you are, that you can't hire that person over there because she makes you uncomfortable, because she's smart, she knows how to articulate, she's intelligent, she knows how to get things done. Or the male, he has a lot of friends, and
okay,
so
Tracy.
All this other stuff. I like to talk. That's what I do. So you have a part too.
Like, okay, Tracy.
Like, wrap it up. You have to do this. Wrap it up. Right.
Sarah, I know you have something, and I'm gonna jump down to Joyce, and then we're going to talk about it. So what I want you to prepare for, Tracy, is 3 points. I have to focus her. 3 points on how to deal with the grief of what we're going through right now. Okay. So, Sarah, did you have something about the rewards and just thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my reward is pretty obvious. I wasn't guaranteed motherhood. Yeah. So just being their mom is my reward. My responsibility, I think, is more intentional than other people's. My responsibility to protect and honor their race is more intentional. And it has been from the day when you fill out an adoption application for the state of Ohio, whether it's private or public, through the county, you check, it's like a mail order list. It's yes, no, willing to consider. Everything from race to gender to age to potential disability, were they everything under the sun. And you have to check white, black, biracial, but in order to be considered for biracial, you have to check black and white. So from that minute, it was intentional for me.
So you only checked black?
I checked all three.
Okay.
Because I didn't care.
Right.
But it's been intentional. And I think that's where a lot of people, my race, are not, where we're dropping the ball is we're not being intentional enough.
Yeah.
And that's my responsibility. And like I said, the benefit is just getting to be their mom. They're the coolest kids in the world. They're the bee's knees.
They are cool. I love that we've used mainly, Sarah and Sonia have used the word intentional several times. And I think that's one of the keys to getting to places of solution here, of being intentional in what we teach them, what we share with them. I think I like, Sarah, that you mentioned, and this was also going to be one of the points of being intentional with reminding them that our history does not start with slavery, that they're honoring where you came from and being proud of that, so that you know, as a Black person already, sometimes it feels like, do you all even want me here? You know,
Right.
And understanding that there is some pride that comes with that. So I love the word intentional. So Joyce, rewards, responsibilities of raising young Black men.
Well, I'm going to start from when I had them. Let's start there. I was intentional about how we named them. So you can't look at their resume and just discern what color, what race they are. You're not gonna know.
Right.
You're not.
I do the same thing.
You're not. And that was intentional. Like
Yep.
I don't want, but when they keep their resume, I don't want you to just assume they're Black or white. You know,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Let's see what the quality. Let them read through the resume. You know, when you talk about being intentional, I'm sitting here smiling like I intentionally love them with everything in me every day.
Yeah.
I intentionally want the best for them every day.
Yeah.
Again, I can say, you know, the road has been bumpy. It has not been easy. I wouldn't change it because I mean, I intentionally have the conversation of, you know, Mama screwed that up. We're gonna try this again a different way. I get to celebrate the fact that I'm such a boy mom. Like I couldn't imagine, honestly. I love little girls. I have nieces. They're beautiful and amazing. But I wouldn't cut out for that life. I'm not. I'm not. I get to go in the backyard and, you know, we play basketball hard. We run track. Like get to train them. Like I get to do, you know, those. They're amazing. I'm truly blessed, and I consider it a blessing every day that God gave me them. You know what I mean? God gave me them. And, you know, we talk about being intentional and being in the schools, and you have to be, regardless Black, white, it doesn't matter. You have to show up for them.
Yes.
Every day.
Yeah.
Especially in the school system, their teachers. I mean, because some teachers, I mean, honestly, I know we're getting off the beaten path, but just real quick, there was a teacher in third grade, I'll never forget. And she told me, she said, I've never had experience with teaching Black boys. So I just didn't know. I mean, you know what I mean? And I had another teacher come in. She was like, they're different. She was like, I don't mean that any disrespect way. She said, but you can manage them different. And that I wasn't offended. I was like, okay, well, as you manage them different, don't treat them differently because of their race. Just let's help get them where they need to be. But yes, lots of pride. And I get, you know, they tell me all the time, Joyce, you're ruining these boys. They are loved. They know what love feels like.
Yeah.
They know that they're important. You know what I mean? Like they know that they matter. I get to teach them how to treat women. You know what I mean? Like I get to teach them how to open doors, how to fix
very
stuff,
important.
and you know, make up your bed, clean the toilet. You know, I mean, that's important.
Cook.
They grill. I mean, they grill.
Yes.
You know, and I laugh. I'm like, them girls, they go come back to me, be like, your mama. They'd be like, your mama is amazing. She did a great job.
Right.
But you know what, Joyce, that brings up a good point with the role of, and I know this is a whole nother conversation kind of, but the role of making sure their fathers or role models, Black role models, men, are in their lives, and how we as women, we can only do so much for a Black boy.
We need to do this again.
Yes.
Discussion.
Yeah. That's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other. It's an important conversation.
It is.
They need to as they get that swagger and that pride, and they
That
kind of swell up, and they cross the
Mhm.
wrong person, they need a man to help them know how to walk that fine line.
Yes.
Right.
I agree.
Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, and just, you know, the importance of making good choices. I Pastor Holly, he's a pastor here in Atlanta. I was listening to a video that he did on this topic, and he said he constantly tells his son that good choices, good consequences, great choices, great consequences, the power of our choices, and teaching our young men that.
Mhm.
Following the rules, yes, I mean, but you know, how much do we allow them to be innovative as well? Because we know great millionaires, great leaders, they didn't follow all the rules all
That's
the
right.
time. So how did they, you know, do that and still, you know how to navigate not getting in trouble or being judged? It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. I'm sorry, Joyce, did you have something else you were going to say about the rewards and the responsibilities?
No, we're good.
Good. So what do we do with the grief? What do we do right now as we're watching our country rioting, looting all over these issues, as we are already starting to see, I feel like the medical examiners in Minneapolis, are preparing us for a possible acquittal when they say that George Floyd already had medical conditions that contributed to his death. Well, a lot of people that happens, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a murder that happened. So not knowing what's going to happen, how do we deal with the emotions?
First, we have to acknowledge that, acknowledge that we're angry. And when I say acknowledge, I mean, obviously we're all angry and we're saying that we're angry, but I mean, really go down and find these supportive networks in order to talk. Specifically for Black men, there's a shortage of these conversations that I think are happening. I know, people like Sean King and some of the bigger, activists are, creating platforms for this, but, we can't all get to those spaces. But I think for specifically for Black men, because they suffer in silence. They suffer in silence, and it impacts everything around them. And I think to really get in touch with that anger, because it's historical. This just didn't just happen. This is just another layer of something that they're already dealing with. So this is not new. This is just another layer, but admitting and acknowledging what you feel is, first of all, I think, is releasing the anger, not releasing as in forgetting, but getting it out. There's something that, when we talk about getting it off our chest, there's a physiological release that happens with that when you are able to express your anger and your sadness, your grief, your frustration. There's something, just healing when you are able to talk about it.
Right.
And it's better when you talk about it with people who understand rather than people who don't understand. Yeah. So while we're being angry at, everybody, that it doesn't help us to heal. It doesn't help us. So finding that support group, to where you can be heard and understood, or support network so you can be heard and understood, is important. Number one. And there are the stages. Stages of grief. There are no stages of grief. I mean, there are stages of grief, but that doesn't fit every person. So when we talk about anger, denial, all those things, we don't move through these things in a linear fashion. So you may be one day fine, and then the next day you're mad, and then the next day you're like, I can't believe this is happening, and I can't. So be okay with wherever you are. Being okay with being, today I'm feeling okay. I'm good. Tomorrow I'm pissed off. Let's call it what it is, but be okay and know that we're not moving through these linear spaces. And then there's no time limit. There's no time limit on the way that we're going to be dealing with this. So the self-care and the soul care is important. It's really important that we create a space for ourselves to accept reality the way it is, because we don't have the power individually to change it. We can only change ourselves. And so not allowing everything to be part of our, our existence in terms of today I'm angry. I need to control my emotional temperature. I need to control that, whatever that looks like. So I need to get up in the morning and make a decision. No matter what happens or what I read today, I've got to create some boundaries, emotional boundaries for myself today. Because if I don't, if I don't do that, I'm going to, stress out, have heart attacks and whatever, all the other things that happen along with unresolved grief. But that, it's a long conversation to have about what to do, but those are things that we can start to think about and how we acknowledge our feelings. Grief is emotional. It is not intellectual. So it is not an intellectual statement that will help. When people come to you, that's why everybody's so ticked off, because it's not intellectual. This is emotional.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't feel so bad about that. And, oh, they're looting. Why are they looting? You're missing the point. You're not even getting to the emotional part of why we're looting, so those things don't help. So we've got to, we've got to use the right tool, not intellectual statements.
What about, Sonia, if you can address this piece, what about dealing with the fear?
I
feel like I'm just fearful. I don't want him to drive.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go with that one.
I know.
But I think, at the same time, being fearful but being prayerful, and then using some precautionary, measures to help navigate the fear. And but at some point, we do have to just trust that God has them, and then also give them wise points. There's certain things that you don't need to go, certain places you don't need to go. And, but when you're in college, it's a little bit different because you're not going to be there. And, we all did some stupid stuff ourselves. And I just tell you, if it wasn't for the grace of God, but what I do believe, though, that helps for me to get through my emotions is that when I feel like I'm making progress and I'm bringing a solution to the problem and doing something in the area where I can, because we all have places of influences. We all have something that we can do. And we talked about the morality issue as well. And so we can't legislate it, but having conversations with our white friends having conversations with us, and we understanding and empathizing with each other, that's going to help change. And so when I feel empowered, when I feel my fear and my anger subsides, when I feel like, okay, we're making some headway, or some things are progressing. But when I don't see any progress, that's why we feel so angry right now, because it's like, have we made any progress? We have, but when we continue to see this, I think when we really see real progress in the sense that whites have really joined us in this fight, and not to say some whites have not, because they have, and I don't want to negate that, but from a big point of view, when we really see that, and we really see like, okay, we are really trying to make change. That might be naive for me to even think that, but that's going to help with my emotional state. And at this point, I'm doing some things very, again, my word, intentional. At this point, when we got in the pandemic, I said, I'm all the way awake now, God, whatever you want me to say, because whatever you want me to do, because what the pandemic showed me is that we can be here today, gone tomorrow. Things can change like that. So we don't have time to wait, because this world is going. So I'm like, where I wouldn't have, things I've put on Facebook now, I would have been like, no, Sonia, be politically correct. Do not call out your white friends. You should not do that. Girl, I have put it out there. I don't even care. I've written some white people in high positions, that organizations that I'm a part of, asking them what they're going to do If they don't respond to my email,
let's
I
deal
will
with
be
that.
making some phone calls. I mean, y'all can tell I'm hyped.
Okay, let's deal with that piece. Okay, so I want Sarah and Joyce to weigh in as well. But like, what is it? First of all, two things. What do we want our white friends who've asked me, and I'm sure asked you, what can I do? So what is the answer? What can they do? What do we need to hear? And then number two, Sonia, you mentioned, you're contacting people in high places and leaders of organizations or companies and things. What is it exactly can be done in a real sense right now to help this situation?
Well, I'll briefly answer the little bit I started, and then y'all can go because I don't want to be too long. But the organizations that I am a part of are ministerial denominational organizations where I am a minister. So I feel like it is predominantly white, and my husband and I are part of it because we felt like God led us that way. I feel like they should start a conversation, and we should listen to each other, and we should get solutions, and we should be working together to bring some solutions, because most of these pastors and leaders that are in the organization, they have platforms, they have pulpits where they're talking to both white and Black congregations on a weekly basis. And if the white pastors don't begin to teach and educate and bring light to it, as well as because we sound like we're angry and we're just fussing and we're complaining, it's got to be a collective effort. So that is what I'm being led to do. I think we all have to be led, to start some conversations. Mm-hmm. So two organizations that I'm a part of, I'm initiating some conversations.
Okay. Sarah, what are some of the things, because you're coming at it from a mom and you're white. What is it that, like, from your other white friends, have your friends reached out to you over the past week or two? Like, okay. Yes. And so what are you saying? Like, this is how you can support me.
This is coming from a professional point of view as well. I work for a counseling practice. I think that embracing and advocating for mental health help, especially for minorities and especially for men, and making it accessible is probably one of the smartest and strongest ways to help. The crisis phone calls, I handle the phones. The crisis phone calls I'm getting are just horrific. People are a mess right now. Wow. White, Black, with a true diagnosis, with anxiety, with whatever. People are a mess. Mm-hmm. And I think that until we make mental health help available, accessible, and something that people aren't embarrassed to talk about, that would be such a step. And children, my kid goes to a counselor. They should, if they need it. I think that is one of the biggest things you can do. And obviously Black men specifically aren't seeking out a psychiatrist anytime soon. But if they need it, they should, and they should be able to have it at a reasonable amount of money or an insurable cost that doesn't put them further in a hole.
But how does your friend, like, I got to go back to work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I got to talk about thousands of dollars about something random. In the back of my head, I'm thinking about George Floyd, or I'm thinking, so how do you, I know this sounds so ridiculous, but it's like, how do you sit with people and talk about random stuff when this is weighing so heavy on your heart?
Because I think that in order to function, we're all going to have to compartmentalize a little bit. And I know I need a paycheck. So from 9 to 5, it's always going to be in the back of my head, and it's always going to be in my heart. But I also know, the tasks I need to do to be able to provide for my children.
Yeah.
But But I think, again, it comes back to conversation where at the end of your workday, when you're driving home, call somebody and say, God, today was terrible. I was in tears all day long because somebody was murdered that shouldn't have been, and the country's on fire.
Yeah.
You know, I think being able to say it out loud and hopefully not offend, even though I do that all the time. The more dialogue, the more conversation, the more openness we have is the only way we're going to get further.
That's a good point. Joyce?
For me, it's always eye-opening. But when you say friends, right? Not people you know. So my friends are very limited. They're very limited.
Right.
I don't trust folks. Like,
She's got a small circle.
I don't trust people. But God is working on me in my heart. But we all, I'm just, you know what you're gonna get when you get me. I'm 100 all the time. And I'm not always gonna say it correctly. We clean it up later. But I've had 3 of my white friends, and I hate labeling like that because they're my friends.
Right.
But I did have 3 of my white friends, or 3 friends that were white, however you want to say it,
Right.
that reached out and were like, are you okay? Yeah. You know, what are the conversations you're having with the boys? Are you praying? And I think for me, it was like, please understand, yes, it's been a rough week, but this didn't just start happening this week.
Right.
So for me, it's, are you aware? Or what bubble are you living? No, and I don't mean that to being funny, but just.
That's such a good response though.
I mean, what bubble are you living in? Like, this happens every day. I mean, it does in some shape, form, or fashion. Point taken, I had a girlfriend call me, and her boyfriend got pulled over right after the Minnesota accident. And he was just like, I can't stand the police officer. Like, only God saved him that night. 2 sheriffs showed up. It could have been another gone bad. But, and I said it to say, it doesn't just happen when it's on the news. You know what I mean? So teaching.
Or being recorded.
Well, what can you do? Be aware, right? When you see something wrong, check it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't just sit back. I went to a place and it was filled with people that didn't look like me. I was the only brown person there. And they all knew me. And the reason why I say I can't call them friends, not one person said a thing. They just looked at me like they would look at me any other time, right? And I'm just like, I know y'all see me. I know y'all don't see the news. You know, what are you thinking? I'm being like, what are you thinking?
Right.
But it is about conversations because people are afraid to have conversations. And then I also want to point out that you also can't judge people because people process and heal differently. I really had to take a step back. So let me pray. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's just a lot. And we all process and handle things differently. We just gotta do the best we can. So what we all need to do, we all trying to figure that out.
And give each other some grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have to create these psychologically safe environments.
There you go.
And I don't think we need to, Sarah, you said compartmentalize. And I think that's
respond on the social media. They didn't
because I think that does contribute to part of why we are where we are, because people don't want to talk about it. And it's like, we have to disrupt the comfort. It's already uncomfortable for everybody. We might as well go all in.
Right.
You go back to work tomorrow, Lee. It's just like, we're going to be tiptoeing around the conversation and people don't know what to say to you, and maybe you finding the language to open up those dialogues. I don't have the answers for that particular issue, but I know creating a psychologically safe environment is what is going to move this forward, because it's like the elephant in the room. It's like, did anybody see that?
I think it goes back to, though, at the initial part of this conversation, we talked about teaching young men how to behave in certain environments. So at work, maybe that's not the place to have the conversation all day long.
It's the elephant in the room there, though.
Agreed. Totally agreed. But I think that, again, you need to know your circumstances, mitigate them, have a level of decorum and professionalism,
Absolutely.
and figure out where and when to have the conversation. The
Mhm.
conversation needs to happen a lot,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
but I think it's a
Yeah.
matter of where and when.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the missing piece. Maybe not compartmentalizing it, but knowing where and when, because when you
Right.
think about, we spend our lives at work.
That's right.
So to
That's
not
right.
have those conversations at work, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And for some of us, we're in positions of influence. So it's like God put you in that position for a reason.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how can you impact? I have a hand in my diversity initiatives at my job. I
Mhm.
have to,
Sure.
Right.
so, but I do think it is a coping mechanism, because you can get to work and kind of like get through stuff, just to kind of, again, like cut off some constant
Distract.
thinking about it. So I do get that. But looking for the right times and the right
Yeah.
moments and the right people. I had
Right.
a coworker who asked me if I was okay. She noticed something was wrong. She was texting me, and I kept saying, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm da, da, da. And then I
Mhm.
finally said, this is breaking my heart. My heart is very heavy. I have 2 Black sons. This hits home. And her response was, well, you're a strong woman and you're raising good young men.
That doesn't
And
necessarily matter.
I called, I had a choice. I had a choice to just say, okay, I'm not speaking to her. I'm going to, or I could make this a teachable moment. And I picked up the phone and I said, the only reason I'm talking to you and talk about this right now is because I like you and I value you as more than a coworker. But let me tell you how offensive that was. And I had to explain to her that it didn't matter that I was raising my child to be a good young man, that he was still under the same type of
Right.
scrutiny, discrimination, attacks. I still feel fear for his life. And
Yeah.
she did not have a clue. She apologized profusely. I didn't mean it that way. I was like, I know you didn't, because if you did, I probably would not have called you. But it opened her eyes to a lot. And so that was a coworker, So conversations, I think we need to keep the conversations going, in small ways and big ways. And hopefully people watching the video today, people are on, people are making comments. Thank you so much.
Right.
I think this helps in helping just break down some barriers.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do want to just add this with people of Caucasians, whites. I think acknowledging it and doing what they can to help bring solutions as well, because a lot of times they've been quiet, and when you're quiet, you're being complicit. And those who have the courage to speak as well and do it and acknowledge that there's a problem, and then of course having the conversation, because some naively don't know, but some need a change of heart as well, and to acknowledge that. I mean, just like any other thing, we have to acknowledge when we're wrong in areas too. All of us do, in whatever way, and be willing to change if you're part of not knowing and not understanding, not realizing there's white privilege out there and things of
I
that
was just
nature.
gonna say,
Yeah, you
acknowledging the privilege. Just
you
say it. I mean,
be
it is
real.
what it is.
Well, Sarah, I'm sorry. I know
No, go
we're
ahead.
on live. We got a lot of people watching us right now, but do white people realize that they have privilege?
No,
They don't.
I was like, is that just a term we use, or do they know that
no.
you have privilege from the jump?
Just because
you walk in the
from
door?
the start, I could have a different experience than you would have somewhere, anywhere, in a store, in an altercation, in anything.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of white people who claim to be woke aren't even aware of how privileged that sounds. Like it's so ridiculous to think that you and I were handed the same starting line, because we weren't.
That's true.
I think people want to see that, especially those of us who are believers. We want to see that from humanity's, perspective.
Right.
But the reality is that God made us all different. And the fact that is not even being acknowledged, that's where the education needs to start. I've had these conversations this week with, my white colleagues, and, they minimize it because they don't understand it. But it's like, I need you to see, just because I'm your Black friend, and I know Black people, I have Black friends, that's not helping the issue. You have to acknowledge, first you need to understand and educate yourself on the fact that my experience is much different than yours. And so just because your experience, you have to acknowledge that first, because we can't go anywhere until you acknowledge that. So here is your unconscious bias just screaming at you. I'm holding a mirror up to you right now. And you're not looking into it because you habitually prefer not to look into the mirror when these things happen. I just scroll past that. I don't want to deal with that. I had a conversation the other day about personalities. It's like, hey, this none of that matters. This is our experience. This is the African-American experience. And we have to find a way to get you got to find a way to get educated about the African.
I was just going to say I think that's our responsibility.
Yeah. And admit that you don't know. And I'm okay with you
100%
that you don't know. You need to unlearn some things, but admit that, acknowledge that. And that's
trust me,
the space where
going into this today, nerve-wracking for me.
Well, I'm sure. I'm sure. But you know what? Thank you for your courage and showing up to represent.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it is
represent that.
Not my comfort zone, number one.
But you did it.
Yeah.
Well, because it's my responsibility as my kid's mom, but more importantly, I think it's my responsibility as a human.
As a human being, yes.
And just everybody stop pretending you know everything, because you don't.
That's right. That's right.
Stop pretending everyone has the answers, because you don't. Stop pretending your opinion is more important than everyone else's, because it's not.
That's
right.
And if we could all come from that place of, I could never claim to know your experience. I would never claim to know that. So if we could all stop pretending we know what the other person has lived or is living or is scared for their child to live, we might have a shot at getting this to calm down a minute.
And I think on both sides, because even at the top of the hour, Sarah, you mentioned your first thing was, I'm embarrassed.
Oh, for sure.
I was just like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that being your experience. So,
but can you being embarrassed open a door for learning?
Sure.
So that's not a bad thing to feel embarrassed or guilty, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, but I guess I took it on as, I felt like maybe protecting people's feelings. I was just like, oh, I don't want her to be embarrassed. She didn't do it,
Yeah, but everybody has, like you said, if you're silent, you're complicit. So I'm not silent.
Well, I think we have gone way over.
Way over.
But you still have followers.
We gotta have some conversations though. This stuff gotta be talked about, girl. We can't be quiet.
We have to talk about it. That's the problem. We have to talk. We have to talk about it. We have to have this dialogue in order for us to, so I got a different understanding of Sarah. She kind of, validated some things that I have been thinking. So thank you, Sarah. And also, what we need to do in terms of just going forward. We got to create these conversations when you go back into the office tomorrow, and these things need to be talked about. We can't go back and just sweep it under the rug because we don't know how to deal with it. We got to live in the discomfort. We got to stay in this discomfort for a minute.
Yes.
We got to stay there for a while. And I'm all for it, because that's what I do. I'm
Well,
all for
God
it.
got
I'm like,
us all
say
uncomfortable
what to
in
do.
so many ways.
Amen.
Because you know what? This is where the growth happens, outside of your comfort zone.
Gotta be on.
So we got to stay in it. We got to stay in it. We got to wrestle with it. We got to wrestle with our feelings. We got to wrestle with our emotions and ask the questions, the hard questions. We got to look at ourselves in the mirror. We got to, you know, and we got to lead ourselves first so we can model for other people what that
That's
might
it.
look like.
And for your children.
Yeah,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm.
Exactly.
And I think my biggest takeaway was, well, first of all, being intentional, even though I'm very intentional, but I think there are more intentional things I can do, especially in giving my kids a sense of pride of who they are.
Mhm.
But I think when Sonia, you said that our children are going to be part of the solution if we're intentional with it. And I'm like, oh, I can completely see that because my kids are amazing. So I'm
Right.
I'm like, yeah, they're going to be part of the solution.
They are.
And telling them that, because my son is a little Instagram star and he's about to go online at 8. He's like, I'm going to talk about what's going on. And so he will be part of the solution.
He will. Yes. Yes.
Any final comments before we go ahead and end for tonight? Sarah, you can take a deep breath.
Exhausted.
Yeah, we're exhausted.
I'm tired.
But thank you for initiating the conversation.
Yes.
I just think this is so good, and this is a great starting place.
Yep.
And we got to keep. But what you were saying about we got to stay in this uncomfortable place, and God has put us all in an uncomfortable place with the pandemic, with everything.
I was going to say, you've been locked up for 3 months.
Yeah, it's stirring a lot of stuff.
That's right.
And, you know, without the, you know, these things happening is sparking that it's time for change in this world in so many different ways. And this being, so just thank you. Thank you for having the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Sarah, for all
You're welcome.
courage.
Yes.
Sarah and I did not get a chance to really talk. This was all via thing and everything. So thank you for your courage.
We'll send you a bottle of wine, Sarah.
Make it a case.
And thank you, Sonia, for your openness and bringing us to the Holy Spirit. I knew you were going to insert your faith into this. Thank you, Tracy, for your emotional, mental health and advice and consulting in that way. And then thank you, Joyce, for just your energy and sharing your directness with us.
Yes.
And gave us a lot to think about, especially with even what you shared about with your grandmother said, those were real conversations and just how to navigate that now in today's time. So thank you guys so much. I truly appreciate it. And I consider this a success because I've learned something. I feel better.
Good.
Yeah. You know, and our Facebook is blowing up. A lot of people are loving it, saying they're having a great conversation. This was such a great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. And you guys,
I have recorded this. I will send you guys a recording, and anyone who missed it, I forgot to record at the beginning, so it missed some beginning parts, but we still got a good 45 minutes or an hour.
It's recorded on Facebook Live.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, I want to make sure I'll have it on YouTube or something. That
you can just download it from Facebook Live.
Yeah, just download. Yeah, we have the whole thing there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, download it from Facebook Live.
Download it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Nice meeting you, ladies.
It was nice
Great
to meet
conversation.
you all.
I'm gonna follow y'all on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and Sonia, somebody wants to meet you on my page, and I'm going to connect you to her. She said, I need to meet Sonia, so I'll connect you.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Okay.